Hello, everyone. This is Chala Dinkoy, CEO and founder of the Repositioning Expert. Can I say the word expert? Coming to you live with another Tuesday tea time with Chala. I've got my trusty protein, which is supposed to be tea, and it hasn't been tea since COVID. This is when the dregs in the bottom are like congealing. But other than that, I'm talking to you about cringe-worthy networking mistakes because I was at such a great event that I networked at 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to another one in a month. Well, I'm going to another one in less than a month, but a really big conference, which is the Women's Business Enterprise Network Conference, the WeBank Conference in Salt Lake City on the when is it? The 15th of June. So all of these events are coming up, and I'm speaking to a lot of businesses that are my size that are just cutting the in-person events. They're just cutting them. They're like, nope, can't go, not going, not doing it. And what I noticed when I actually did go, and this was my first time going to that particular one, the WPO one in Fort Lauderdale 2 weeks ago, was what I noticed was there's two types of people that were there. One, their business is still thriving, so it's not an issue for them to put in the marketing expense to take themselves or their team and their team there. Two, they are, despite the state of the economy, spending on their marketing and visibility. So because their business is down there. Either way, I want to be with people who are either doing well or are looking past the difficulties of the economic, difficulties of what's happening right now, and still investing in their marketing, because that's the kind of person I want to be with. That's the kind of person I want to be hired by, and that's the kind of person I want to network with. So I'm going to give you some hints and tips and tricks and strategies not to make the mistakes that I used to make at the beginning of, I started networking for my business 20 years ago when I was still working in corporate, because I had my side gig of having my own consulting coaching business. So 40% of prospects actually convert to clients in person versus if you're interacting with them digitally. So either by Zoom or, on email. So, and that's 14%. So sorry, 16%. There's a huge gap. There's a huge conversion gap, a cliff between the two. And the reason is because in person still works, in person still converts. And I found that it is a divider of those who are like mired in this is such a horrible economy and I'm doing so badly and I'm stuck in fear, versus people who are not thinking that way and also who are still doing well. So this is a huge divider right now if you're going out to events. So if you are going out to networking, and this is, I teach B2B, but it's just as relevant if you do B2C. So the first cringeworthy mistake that I used to make is showing up without a plan. If you don't know who you're going to be meeting, why you're going to be meeting them, what you're going to be saying to them, and you haven't, made some form of strategy around how they're going to be of use to you and your business, and how that interaction and introduction is going to convert into business, then you're wasting. It's called throwing up, or I guess showing up and throwing up. And that's what I'm going to say 90% of my clients before they meet me do. And, 95% of all businesses that I meet just go, and they're hoping for the ticket to be their strategy. And I used to say, for trade shows, chocolate on your table is not a strategy, and it's not. Same as just showing up is not a strategy. So you have to, the first job, of course, is what I do with clients, is you need to have a super niche. You need to know what is the industry that you're targeting and what is the number one pain point that you help solve for them that's differentiated from everybody else. And so that gives you a really good idea of who you're going to meet and what you're going to talk to them about, what you're going to say, and how you're going to meet them at this event. So do not show up. And I'll give you an example. My reason for going to the WPO event was to meet the sponsors. And the sponsors were all of the financial institutions. And I won't name them, but they're the largest in, the United States, that were in a very small group of a tiny trade show floor, spread over 2 days of being able to interact with them in a very small group of a very high end, high net worth group of women business owners. Now, the women business owners could have been my target. That's great. But really, what I was there for was to make those sponsorship connections so that I could plan out my executive roundtables, which are the converting events and the funnel for my business. And it's a win-win for them because their number one issue is to try to connect with local businesses through providing them with value added advice. And what better than an expert facilitated sales and marketing peer discussion around a very intimate, invite only, exclusive 15 people, 15 CEO discussion forum called an executive roundtable. So it was a very, very, very positive event for me because I already knew I had proof of concept. I've been doing this with great success for many years, multiple years with one of America's or North America's largest, maybe the world's largest banks. So I had proof of concept. I knew who I was going to approach, and I knew exactly what I was going to say to them, and it worked. Okay. The number 2 cringeworthy networking mistake is I have seen people collect cards and contacts and try to go to as many events, as many times, to try to meet as many people as possible. But again, it's quality versus quantity. I, by no means, was able to talk to everybody, nor did I try to talk to everybody, nor could I even talk to everybody, even when I did either in keynotes or breakouts where people would know me. I still would convert more when I had my selected, curated room of targeted people invited to a very specific event that I was doing for them. So those roundtables always now have, even in the past, have converted more than the large group events, which, I mean, it wasn't about quantity. It was all about quality. So instead of talking to everyone, do the pre-research. Who's going to be there? Who was there last year? Who's sponsoring? Who's going to be at the booths? And then go from there. And what I help clients do is, what we do is we pick events that we know their target clients are going to be at, and then we try to reach out to them, and we send them door openers. And when they're relevant to the business pain or to the business, it makes a huge impression. So they're able to go up and walk up and say, hey, did you get the XYZ mystery gift? I'm the one who sent it to you. And they're able to connect right then and there because they've done their homework. They went above and beyond by sending something that was relevant, and they made an impression because they stood out. And that's what you want. In the world of AI, it doesn't matter how much information or analysis you have. You still have to stand out. You still have to be relevant to their pain, and you still have to go above and beyond. And especially in person, builds trust way quicker, as you see from the conversion numbers, than anything digital could. Okay, number 3 cringeworthy networking mistake is collecting cards and disappearing. So, I mean, this is huge for, especially if you're the one who's hosting a table at a trade show, because I remember coming back from events with like stacks and stacks of cards. And I used to send those cards I used to like mail them, like snail mail them, or afterwards I started scanning them to my assistant to scan through and put them in to the people that I was going to be, in communication with, emailing to try to get appointments with. But now, none of that. I go through the card. Well, first of all, I don't even take the cards. This is if I'm speaking, I take a whole bag of cards because we do the draw for the chocolate in my book. But if I'm not speaking and I'm going to a networking event, I already know who I'm going to connect with. Hopefully I know their name. And if I don't, then I learn it when I get there. And then what I'm doing is I'm asking them for an appointment. And I do it right away, because if what I'm saying is not of use to them or relevance to them, then I don't want to meet with them anyway. So this only happened with, out of the four that I met, of the four major financial institutions that I met at the trade show floor, one of them refused to give me the appointment. And then she said, oh, just, reach out to me. And then I said, well, can I have your information to reach out to you? And she didn't even want to give me that. So I knew it was a no go. I mean, she very reluctantly gave me her email, but, and I have since been in touch, but she hasn't responded. So that was such a clear indication that A, she herself did not see the value in what I was offering, or B, she wasn't the right person. So I'm going to continue. I mean, it's an enormous, huge organization. So I'm going to continue to try at other events to see if I can be introduced to, or introduce myself to, other people who may or may not see the value. But everybody else that I spoke to who saw value in what I did gave me an appointment right then and there. So this is the way that you ask, is when you, first of all, you've done the homework, you know who you want, you know why you're going there, and then you go and you ask them, is it okay? Because we're going to get nuts as soon as we walk out of here. Can I get into your appointment book? And nobody who actually sees value in what you do will not give that to you. And if they don't want to give you the appointment, I mean, in some cases, they don't know, right? So one, they could be using that as an excuse and say, I don't know what my schedule is going to be like, or I don't know what so-and-so schedule who I want to pull into the meeting. In that case, I ask for an appointment to get an appointment. So I say, is it okay if I check in with you on so-and-so date at, 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock? And if they won't even give you that, again, huge tell. And because otherwise people will, because if they're serious and they see the value. Okay. So the fourth point of the cringe-worthy networking mistakes is the weak pitching. This is something that I train, all business owners, but you're especially asked to do kind of like an elevator pitch, not a kind of, but an actual elevator pitch when you meet people in person at networking, and they say, oh, and what do you do? And what do you do? Right? So if you're, first of all, if you are too generic, if you are not super niche, and these are some of the things that I talk about now in executive roundtables that I'm teaching AI in, because AI is looking for one thing and one thing only, and it's looking for expertise. It's looking for someone, like a company or a name, to be associated over and over again on the internet, and or any of the topics of speaking or writing or anything at all to do with a super niched concept of a problem, a pain point that you solve for a very specific industry. If you're too generic, or you haven't focused down into a super niche, AI can't find you, AI can't recommend you, AI doesn't see you. You're just generic. So the same thing holds in your elevator pitch. Your super niche is the backbone of your differentiation strategy. It's what we use with clients to, what I call, hook their way into an interest with a large corporation. We did one of these topics, I think 2 weeks ago, is how you super niche into your competitors' weak spots. That's one option. You super niche into a pain point that is not currently being addressed, but is very, very specific and expensive. And it's very common for that industry. So once you've super niched, it's going to be very easy for you to have a very strong pitch, which is why your pitch, 70% of humans buy something based on if they're feeling pain around that topic, and they buy a solution. So when you're speaking to people and you're introducing, when they say, what is it that you do? You have to make your self-introduction about their problem, and the most expensive problem that you can solve. So in the cases of, for example, the financial institutions, their number one, problem that I solve is to connect with the business community and to provide value to them so that they get to have an intimate, long-term relationship, so that one day they will trust them with their finances. And what I do is I facilitate that through offering a turnkey event, an activation event for them. And it's turnkey, high level, high touch. and high intimacy and very small. So all of that was very attractive to the people that I was talking to because that is their pain point, and I know that's their pain point because I specialize in it. So make sure that you're in front of, first of all, the right people, the right audience, that you've done the work, the strategic work to position yourself online and offline in the right way, positioned on that pain, where you're constantly talking about how you provide solutions and talk about case study after case study of what you've done when that exact same problem has been present in the client base that you serve and how you've helped them and what their results were. And that's the base of your elevator pitch and how you introduce yourself. And you will never go away from a networking event if you do these things without actual appointments, which then convert into clients or client funnels in my case. All right, number 5, the last cringeworthy networking mistakes that I'll talk about here is skipping events because everything's online now, because everything's done by AI. Well, 95% of executives, according to the Harvard Business Review research, say that face-to-face is essential for a long-term relationship build. And anybody who has had a business for any amount of time will tell you that it doesn't matter when the internet came out. It doesn't matter when, LinkedIn came out. It didn't matter when AI has come out, that the most trust is built, the highest amount of trust is built when you're in person. And to use the fact that your business isn't doing so well, to use the fact that the economy is pretty rocky, to use the fact that whatever the reason that you've cut back on your marketing, to not show up in person is cutting back, and it's kind of like suicide. It's marketing suicide, because if you're cutting back on the in-person portion versus giving more funds or more resources to the other, like the digital, the AI, the Zoom and the emails and all of the other social media stuff, you can see the difference. There's a huge cliff of a difference between the conversion rate between in-person versus digital. So don't fall into that trap. That is a truly cringeworthy networking mistake, is not to network because you're cutting back your marketing or you're switching it to the cheaper channels using digital or AI. I hope I was able to convince you. I hope you will come to the, at least to the WeBank if you're in my networks in Salt Lake City in June the 15th. And, or if this has made you take a look again at, the next time that you say no to going to an in-person networking event, and especially going to one without any of the preparations and doing cringeworthy stuff like I used to do, I hope this has changed your mind about some of those things. Have a good one. I'll see you next Tuesday.